Good evening, and welcome to the latest episode of the Eve Prosper Market Show. I'm your host, Lockefox, and I'm here with all the market news you need to know to be ahead of the curve coming in the upcoming week. Let's get started where we usually do, talking about some quick show news, some behind-the-scenes stuff, what you need to know before we get started. First, I want to thank everybody who is tuned in live on Twitch and YouTube. We are simulcasting. If you want to tune in live, we're live on Fridays at 0400. That is Thursday night U.S. time, 8 p.m. Pacific, if you're having trouble with the time zones. All you got to remember is Eve Prosper. That'll get you to Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and our blog. We're here every week, and I'm trying to get more office hour streams together. If you subscribe, you'll be able to know when those office hour streams go live. They're a bit impromptu, so I don't have a schedule for them. Next, be sure to join our Discord. Links are down in the doobly-doo below. That is the absolute very best place to get in touch with me these days. We have a thriving community, and if you're interested at all in the Eve market stuff, some of the metadata, data analytics, Tweetfleet stuff, you should be joining our Discord. Next, I want to thank all of our patrons who keep this show on the air ad-free week over week. You can support the show directly if you get value from the show, if you enjoy what we're doing. This is not an easy show to produce, but I think that the Eve online community is worth it. If you want to throw a couple of bucks in the beer jar, patreon.com/Eve Prosper is the place to do it. And to existing patrons, I would encourage you to log into your accounts, link up your Discord to your account, and claim our Angel Investor reward at $1, which will automatically grant you Discord swag, so that the color on your name, so everybody can know how swag you are. Again, we do not gate any content through our Patreon. The Patreon is just to keep the show on the air and our hardware running and our software paid for. So we don't gate any content, but we are absolutely here every week thanks to our patrons. So if you get value, give a buck. If you can't give a buck, that is totally fine. Be sure to subscribe to us on all of our platforms, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and our blog at Eve Prosper, and so that we can have more subscribe numbers going up and to the right. So that is just as helpful. With that, I think I'm going to go ahead and get straight into the meat of the show, now that we've blasted through the fun part. And we're going to start where we always do, with Plex. Now, longtime viewers of the show will remember that I'm eating a bit of crow on my Plex prediction. I predicted back in December that we'd be down under $1 billion, down at the 950 range. And then the December economic numbers came out, and I had to eat my words. So, new outlook is $1.1 billion. I was expecting to hit that by the end of the month, but it looks like we've backed off that momentum for the time being. This particular pattern is one we're going to see a lot this week. Let me make sure I've got the right things in the right order. This peak and slump sort of pattern is one that we're going to see in like all of the graphs this week. So Plex is staying steady at 1.5 billion. If we go look at the year-long view, we can see that this climb, if you're a betting man, matches a similar period almost a year ago and last spring. I don't think the specifics of what's going on right now really can let you draw those lines as one-to-one. There was a lot of different stuff happening last year this time of year, and we still haven't seen the FanFest news. The FanFest run-up has not really started yet, so this actually could stand to pop. So if you didn't buy in 2 weeks ago when I told you to buy in, now's another decent chance to buy in. I don't think it'll go down, essentially. I'm not sure if it'll go up, because we're really reliant on FanFest hype driving driving some of the other hype between, well, okay, we need FanFest hype and we need Alpha Clones media push, add media push kind of thing to really start putting heat into this market beyond where it is right now. Looking at the supply chain, again, we are under that magic 1K number. I do, to be a little reductionist in Plex, I do expect the equilibrium point to be 1K items Plex on sale. And now that we're under that slightly, we see slight positive growth pressure. So, that's to be expected. It's going where we expect it. There's a little extra buy pressure, looking like there's some shenanigans going on in some of the Citadel spaces. But nothing in here is really jumping out at me as interesting or exceptional, just that we're under 1K, and that will provide some upward pressure. Next, looking at the other RMT items, those are items that are either bought with Plex or money or Aurum, and my scales have been washed out thanks to the resculpt certificates, which I might have to just pull off of this graph, because I don't think anybody gives a crap about the resculpt certificates. I think I'm the only one who cares. We're seeing that the premium we've been seeing in skill extractors is starting to narrow. I know you have to squint really hard to really see it, but I promise it's totally there. Looking at the skill extractor market, we're seeing that the margins are slipping only in so much that the price of Plex is rising, and still at 750 ISK per skill point. This is still a good time to be a skill point farmer. For our newer bros, I might want to remind you that if you have a ISK making tune, if you have the 5 million skill points, if you don't need more skills on that tune, if it's purely a cash making alt, you can subsidize your playtime by just selling the skill points. Like, this is profit right here, making an extra 50 million a month on top of the cost to extract the skill points. I know that skill points are super precious, and bigger numbers are always better, but like, if you have an ISK making tune and it does not need more than the skill points it has, you should maybe consider using those skill points to keep that Omega status, rather than basically subsidize your Omega status just off the meat in your brain. And looking at the injector market, supplies are getting a little bit high. I know it's hard to read between the spikes, so I expect some downward pressure, but I don't think we're going to go much below the 625 mark. Like, the last couple of weeks, we've seen a little bit of peaking, but and the median has moved slightly from 750 on market to a little over 1,000 on market. So this could start getting unstable, but I think that the instability is going to rise more from the cost of Plex and keeping those skill point farms running, more than instability in the market. Like, this sure reads to me that for the extra supply, we're actually still seeing extra demand. Next, moving on to our look at the general markets. I want to let me actually look this up for 2 seconds. Hopefully it didn't roll off the bottom. Okay, so I gotta thank Skia Almer for catching me and calling me out. The graph is slightly different from the previous weeks. I have moved to a new way to plot these graphs, and for some reason there's an extra trillion ISK in the numbers. I'm not sure why. And it's going to be a real butthole to debug. So I'm sorry, and thank you for catching it, but this is just the way it is. We're seeing a little bit of slump. So like I said, this peak a week ago, and slump is we see it in the ship markets, we see it in the mineral markets, we see it in the general trade market, we see it in the skill trading market, we see it in a little bit in the RMT market. So like that trend is across the board. And actually the slump in mining is a little bit suspicious. I still expect a lot of material being mined and coming to market, but it sure seems to me like a lot of it's not actually coming to markets in places that the API counts. So it makes it really hard for a guy like me who relies entirely on the API to get the information on these. Looking at the total destruction in the game, we did see a quiet couple of weeks. I had said at the start of the year that there was a lot of talk and not a lot of action. And so we saw a slump coming out of the winter holidays, but we're still seeing reasonably high activity levels at something in the 15,000 kills per day. And values are tracking back up over the 1 trillion mark, which is always good to see. Looks like it's going to be a hot weekend if the trends are to be believed. We again saw a peak and a slump this week. It might just be that people are reorganizing. There has been another wave of meta shit posting that could land another set of wars going on, but other than nullsec, I'm not seeing any major operations really come across my feed that denote particular like above the normal PvP activity. So I'm not sure exactly where we're going to end up here. Moving on to minerals. We're going to start in titanium, holding steady at 5.0. Demand is staying steady. Prices are staying steady. If we go zoom in on the market, supply lines are staying pretty steady, even if buy quantities are growing. I do expect the supply lines to be a little bit hotter than this, but again, that whole Goons and Delve not really coming to market thing might be stymieing this particular trend. I know that it's tempting to look at this and see upward trend, but one, that's not really an upward trend, and two, the margin here between buy and sell is extremely narrow. So I don't love speculating in titanium. Next, pyrite. Again, we saw a big spike last week and dropping back down to the 7.0 mark. Demand is staying relatively stable. Nothing really exciting going on here. Some signals saying that we could be heading back up, but I again don't really believe them. If we look at the recent zoom in, this is probably the last 24 hours. Supply lines have ticked up towards the 6 billion mark, which means that prices are falling. If you are a T1 producer, pyrite prices under 6.5 is a very tempting offer for stockpiling. So I know that I say this every week. I don't like stockpiling, but if you're being smart with your investments and leveraging the ebbs and flows, a little bit of stockpiling can go a long way to getting an extra few percent out of your operation. So I'd be putting in some ambitious buy orders in the 6.4, 6.3, 6.25 sort of range. I'd be aiming for something down by this dingle here to get that 625, and maybe buy up a week or two's worth of material so that when this bounces back towards 7.0, when this if this subsides, which I think it will, you get to make money off that 625 to 7 jump, which what's that? It's a little better than 10%. So yeah. Next, Mexilon, which was our star pupil last week, crashing into the 80 mark just ahead of the show, has started to lose some steam. And again, same pattern as before. We saw a big peak right at the show last week. And we were really in this shortage area at 500 million units. But supply lines are tracking up just slightly over that unstable point. I still think there is positive play here. I still think a target price of 80 is obtainable, but we need to keep a really close eye on these supplies, because as soon as we get to about 750 million units, I think we'll start tracking back down to the 75, 60, 65 range. So I'd keep a very close eye on this. This would be, if you're a gambling man, this is a decent buy, jumping on this sub 70 buy order, hoping for an 80 sell order. But that's a risky play, and you'll be able to get out without losing any money. But I don't think that you'll, it's, number one, risky that you'll make money. Number two, not risky that you'll lose money. So it's a positive. It's a positive outlook, in my opinion. Next, looking into Isogen, we are just under 65, again showing this weakness. Supplies are tracking up as well, and again, I have a downward prognosis on Isogen. I have for a few weeks. The prices, I think, are going to come down just under this 60 mark. We'll see how high the supplies go. I think Isogen really relies more on casual high-sec miners more than null-sec miners. So this is more a measure of how productive are alphas, in my opinion. But it's not. It's a really weak metric for that. So Isogen down. That's the story there. Noxium also trending down. This one has been really hard to predict. It's been in this sort of could go either way place. And with everything else down for the week, Noxium is following suit. For it tracking down in average prices, the supply line has not really risen that high. So this is, I think, temporary, and I think we're going to rebound back over the 375 mark. But I don't think we're going to hit, I don't think we have any hope of hitting 400. So I don't think this would be I don't think this is a buy. Just that the numbers look worse than they actually are. Next, Zydrene. The bubble is popping. Oh my God. I have said for months that I thought that this trend right after Ascension of heading up was completely ludicrous. And we're finally losing momentum here. We saw a big shortage as somebody bought out some 40 million units out of the market. And the supply lines are growing back up to the 120 million mark, tracking in towards the 160 mark. So if you were holding Zydrene, if you think that it's coming back, sell. You need to be out of Zydrene now. I think that this weekend is going to be bad. Next weekend's going to be worse. We'll see just how high this number goes. I don't know if we'll get above the 160 mark, but I think we're going to be heading back towards a sub 1.1k Zydrene price. So I'm finally right. If I just say the same thing over and over every week, I can't be wrong every week, right, guys? Next, Megasite is also showing some breakage, just not quite at the levels of Zydrene. Prices are backing off the 1600 mark, even though volumes are staying steady. And again, we see the same pattern where some 20 million units were bought out, and then all of a sudden, a lot of extra supply started coming back onto the market. We'll see if we get over those 60 million supply mark. I don't have quite as bad a prognosis for Megasite as I do for Zydrene. I just might be bitter about Zydrene. I think 1.3 target is sort of my expectation here, so I would get out and I would stay out. If you're a gambling man, again, buying, putting some speculative buy orders down in the 1200 range might be worth it. But I don't know. It's really hard from here to tell you, like, if you manage to snag up a cheeky buy order, will you be able to get rid of it at a decent price? So like, there's so little to be lost putting in one of those cheeky buy orders. But yeah, it's gonna be an interesting ride. And then last, Morphite is the one bucking our trend, spiking back over the 12K mark and losing some steam. Longtime fans of the show will know that I have an outstanding buy for anything under 10K as a buy, anything over 10K as a sell. This tends to be really cyclic, and we saw a big bulge in the Tech 2 markets in both bombers and Logi ships, and that supply demand, that demand really ate up the supplies. But seeing as we are coming back to standard levels, and as much as I expect the Morphite supply to be relatively capped, I think we'll be back under 10K, maybe not this weekend, but definitely by next weekend. Moving on to fuel, and what is this? Is this a shiny new graph? Yes, I went ahead and changed one of our oldest, updated one of our oldest index graphs to use the intraday prices rather than the crest prices. And the interesting thing here is what the absolute crap is going on with nitrogen isotopes. If I were a betting man, I believe this is a big productivity boost going on in Delve, where I don't know why they didn't stock up here, but something goons, I don't know. If they are amping up their internal Moongoo refining operation, you should expect goons to be using Caldari towers, because this is the fuel for Caldari towers. Now, the rest of the rainbow blocks are staying steady at 700, and I don't know how steady this price at over 800 is. So if you bought in here, which I don't think I told anyone to buy in here, because I thought that we'd get to from 650 to just under 700, and that's a little bit, that's just shy of 10%, and I really want I really try to tell you guys when it's 10% or better, but it shot way the hell up. I expect this to come crashing back down in reasonably short order, because I expect miners to just destroy this. Like, that's too juicy. And what's this? Another shiny new graph. Are those build prices in the dotted colored lines that I don't know if it's coming out on the stream very well? Yes, that does include build prices, so you can actually see a shrinking build margin. If you have comments about the new graphs, I would love to hear them. Do leave comments either here or on words on our Discord. I don't love the different flavors build charts, because the only variance is the isotope prices. So I might reduce this to just like a quote unquote standard fuel block, where we normalize out the margin from isotopes and just plot basically just the PI prices. But it's interesting to see the margins get really thin. I wasn't able to pull a longer one before the show, but the margins right this second have narrowed to nearly zero across the board, which is strange. I don't know if this is a new paradigm that we're going to end up in. What's that? 20 to 22. So 20 to 22, this is about 10%. So it was making about 8% or 7%, and now we're in a sub 4%, which that's a really tight margin to be working in. So it's a really bad time to be a block producer. So I don't know if this is going to scare a bunch of those block producers out of doing their work. But I assume they have spreadsheets that are telling them just how much their lunch is getting eaten. So we'll see. Next, strontium. We saw a big spike last week in prices as the last of this stuff got bought out, resetting the market. I'm wondering if that's an exploitable pattern where we get below a certain supply level, and buying out 5 million units of strontium isn't that high in order. It's just that these like 15K spikes don't last more than like 3 hours, and to buy out the top of this graph, to try and then sell it on the area underneath here, like I don't know. This smells a little bit more like manipulation than supply, like legitimate supplying. And last, heavy water. We're starting to see supplies get a little bit thin on the ground, so I'd expect prices to trend towards 400. I don't know if we'll get above 375. Again, that's not quite enough to call this a buy. To go from 300, like a 300 buy order to 375 is almost enough. Yeah, it's almost enough. So, like, if you were really good on your buy orders and you were really sure of the way things were going, that might not be a bad buy. But it's risky, and the margins are pretty tight. So, if you don't have good skills, I think the taxes would kill you on this one. Next, we move on to outliers, where we look across the market at things that are weird and try to explain them. We start where we usually do in advanced materials, because I am self-indulgent about production, and I really like talking about moons. We're seeing some surges in metamaterials. We're going to point at the surge in Logi ships causing this. If you were a speculator, I would be looking for overcorrection on the metamaterial markets. They should come down a little bit further. So plasmonic, I really like at the moment. The nonlinear isn't bad either. Otherwise, not a whole lot going on here except for a big spike in nanotransistors, but we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. I know this doesn't quite come out in on the screen. The nanotransistor price spike is because last week we saw a big run on neodymium, or just to make Skeptic Nerd Guy happy, neodymium. We saw a big buyout, a really tight market for supply. And then a big surge in supply. And what we're seeing here, I think, is some moons were changing hands, leading to the shortage. And then this oversupply is both those moons coming back online and old masters burning old supply. So that ends up tanking the prices. So I'd be watching actually this weekend. Like, I'd put in a particularly ambitious buy order in the 17.5 range, and try to slurp up a little bit of this. It's a risky bet because we could end up back at 15K, but like it's hard to tell you where the peak is when it's up. Like, where does the thing stop? I don't think we're going to go much over the 5 million supply mark. So I'm hoping that we stabilize at a 20K price, but I might just be projecting. And the nanotransistors are just having that neodymium price wash forward through the week. So that spike last week is causing a spike this week as producers re-up their reactions, and that cost gets reflected with a lag. I really like speculating on moon materials. It's a personal favorite of mine, but the last time I tried to explain it in depth on the show, it didn't actually do what it was supposed to do, and then I looked like an idiot. So we're not going to spend a ton of time on that. So drone coronary units, these are another one of the items that I think is going into the new mining drones. It looks like supply chains are getting really tight again, and again we might be seeing that the where elite drone AIs were the choke point before, and CCP rebalanced. Drone coronary units might be the next choke point, and prices are spiking hard. I think that it's a little too late to be jumping in on this bandwagon, but be prepared for a 8 million to 10 million price spike if this does not get alleviated in the next week or so. Next is the Mauler, looking quite high. Supplies demand isn't that high. Like we're seeing, something in the range of 100 sold a day. But the demand has. This actually looks like a supply shortage at the moment. Not sure who is buying up all the Maulers. I don't know why they're so popular at the moment. Just that they are. And if you're a T1 producer and you race down to the market this weekend, you might be able to make an extra buck. And then second to last section, we talk about our predictions from the last few weeks. So I tell you where I got it right and where I got it wrong. First, I can't believe I didn't have this in our render deck before, but I have since fixed it. Logistics cruisers, I was just not pulling the numbers, and the Scimitar hit one of our flags, but the Guardian did not. So it's interesting seeing those be so popular, and nobody loves the Oneros because it's not cap stable. The party is over though on Scimitars, so I would be watching this like a hawk for producers coming into market and overproducing. Getting this down to 150 seems a little bit low, but well, it's not out of the ordinary. You could get a buy order down to 150. I don't know when the Scimitar party will come around again, so it's kind of it's a weird spot to be in. Like, it's a decent long-term speculation, but it's an expensive one, and you got to tie up the cash for a while because at 150 million, like, if you buy 5, like, that's a $500 million ISK. That's more than 5. That's like $750 million ISK. Like, you can't. It's a risky place to put money. The Hyena we highlighted last week, and I said if you're a producer, be wary because again we saw the big spike, and then supply is going to rush in to fill that great margin, and we're going to overcorrect. We haven't yet overcorrected under the 20 million mark, but I'm going to give it one more weekend to see if I'm right or not. I'm probably wrong. We haven't seen as much overcorrection in the last few months. Since we came back from hiatus this summer, the pattern of overcorrection has been less reliable. But now with alphas in the system, there's been more heat to work with. So I'm not ready to give up that behavior yet. Caldari control towers was another one I said last week, is that if you were holding them, get them sold. It looks like some of you guys followed through. Prices are tracking back down again. Not a whole lot of interesting things to say here, only that it was high, and I hope you cashed out when it was high. It's tempting to buy right now for the reversal, but actually it's not terrible idea. When I was looking at the PI numbers, they're reasonably stable, so this wouldn't be a terrible investment. It just, again, is another expensive one that's risky. And I think the party is over. But we'll see this weekend with how high the nitrogen prices are. This could absolutely double hump. Like, so one of the spoilers from doing this too long is that we see patterns of 2 reasonably often, but we very rarely see patterns of 3. And it's tempting to say that, there's going to be a third hump thanks to the nitrogen, but I don't love that prediction, and I'd hate to lose you guys money on that. And I believe this is the last one for the set. A little bit out of order. I just wanted to show that if you are a harmonic convergence kind of guy, that elite drone AI settling pattern after they adjusted the drop rates sure looks like a dampened spring mass kind of equation, don't it? Like, this is the sort of pattern that this is why I have that overcorrection idea, is that if you look at this like a signal damper kind of thing, we see this pattern actually a lot where things are very high and then prices get screwed up, and then we might see rises again as people jump back in, and then we'll see us back at equilibrium. But now we're at equilibrium, so this party's basically over until something changes. We might see it start to track a little bit up if we don't get relief in the drone items, but yeah, that's meh. It's a thing. Last but not least, our violence report, where we look across the whole Eve cluster to try and figure out who's killing who and for why. As far as what is dying this week, not a super interesting graph. We're seeing what are those? Vexor Navy issues back at the top of the heap, along with Asteros are very popular, but the mix of items is standard. We've seen this before. Nothing really jumping out. Volumes are basically good. Not a whole, they're basically average, so good job. Next is ships destroyed. We're seeing VTAC 3YG7 leading the pack this last week, with still a lot of activity in DO6H-Q. Jita Tama and Villarreal actually is another new one on the list. We don't see that one come up very often. And then active regions, nothing really exciting here except for Catch is leading our nullsec, and we still see Black Rise, Citadel, and Forge bringing up the Empire Space parts of the equation. So with that, I want to thank everybody who tuned in live. This has been your Eve Prosper Market Show. I've been your host, Lockefox. If you want to tune in live, we're on both Twitch and YouTube at 0400 Friday Eve time, which is Thursday night US. You can follow us at Eve Prosper at Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and our blog. We do try to post reasonably regularly. I know I've been slacking on the blogging. If you want to get in touch with me, if you enjoy the show, if you want to talk more market stuff, I encourage you to join our Discord channel. Links are down in the description below. And if you get value from this show, do consider supporting our Patreon. Our patrons keep this show ad-free every week, keep our server bills paid, keep the hardware running, and make this show possible. So I got to thank our patrons every single week. If you cannot support us directly, I completely understand. Do share this show with your friends. Get subscribed. I do like seeing numbers move up and to the right. So anything you can do to spread the good word of market show goodness, I would appreciate that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this week's show. I've been your host, Lockefox. This has been the Eve Prosper Show, and I will be back next week with more market news and more graphs.